Welcome to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs, a webinar series that packs a ton of important agency information on one topic from one expert into a 25-minute brief. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. I'm your host, Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the agency of their dreams. I'm here today with Lee McKnight Jr. from RSW US. You're the Vice President of Sales, and you guys do new business for agencies solely. So thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steve.
We got introduced. I actually was like, hey, Darren, can you introduce me to this guy, Lee? We've got the same audience. I'd love to kind of get into his brain and understand like how he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Give me kind of what's your story, how you gotten into what you're doing with RSWS, WUS, and you know, what's the state of where you guys are today?
Well, the short version of how I got into it, actually I went to law school, graduated, and
wow.
I think we might have mentioned this, ran away as fast as I could, but I loved law school, but I realized I'm going to finish this because it's bound to help me, but this is not what I want to do. Nothing against lawyers. And then got into a couple of different, so I went back to Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm originally from, was in this internet healthcare company. And as you might imagine, this is in 1999.
Wow.
And when the bubble burst, you know, we had stock options. We're going to be all millionaires. It was amazing. And I worked with an agency in Nashville. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And my wife's like, you're not going back to school again. So you can get a job there. Great. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. And then fast forward through a series of marketing jobs and then jobs working with agencies, found RSW. I'd moved to Cincinnati by that point. And just thought, wow, this combination of sales, which I've been doing, but then again, getting to work with ad agencies. And so the company will be 17 years in November. I will be here 50,
awesome.
In December. Thank you.
Wow.
And yeah, and again, what we're doing there is true business development. So it's not just lead gen, even though that first meeting, breaking through at the top of the funnel is critical, right? But it's also, we realized early on, because our sweet spot is small to mid-sized firms. They all wear so many hats. They're so busy that follow up, either they're not good at it, or they don't have the time to do it, sometimes both. So we realized what we got to do is always ask, how can we get a client closer to actually closing the business? And that really changed everything from that point on as far as the company, because clients were closing more business, which is the most important thing, but then sticking around with us longer too, generally. So yeah, it's all about getting that door in a meaningful way.
So a couple of things that are on my mind. First is, when you were on the agency side before joining RSW, were you on the biz dev side at the agency or more on the marketing?
No. So what I was doing, I actually have never technically worked for an agency. So I basically lived almost literally for 10 months. I was at this agency every day. And then it was, building this company from the ground up through all at the time, a little bit of the net, but every other piece of it, from broadcast to radio to print.
Okay.
So that's how I learned. It really helped in this position, learn all these different levels, because I was working with so many different, departments, if you will. Moving from there, I did essentially biz dev the rest of my career at that point, which is about 7 years, sales and on the marketing side too, a bit. So
yeah. So, and you distinguish between agencies that do marketing services and PR agencies. Is that a distinguisher just so you can attract them, or is it because they behave and act and require different things?
Well, kind of all the above. Where it gets a little bit hard for us is it's just easier to use the one thing and say we only work with agencies.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's all different kinds of firms. So yes, it's traditional full service agencies, but it's also digital, broadcast, SEO, production, PR, different animal, obviously. But and some even today, as the audience will know, and you well know, some would call themselves tech firms, right? Even though they're skirting that line these days between what an agency, and everything changes so quickly these days. But no, it's all different types of firms, but the sweet spot is small to mid-size. That's predominantly where we play.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the messaging that targets agencies, digital marketers, branders, et cetera. And then there's a line, and it's and PR agencies. And having spent 5 years at a PR agency, I think, and I know I've got tons of friends that run PR agencies. I got friends that are PR agency coaches. They still wear different costumes and think that they're kind of a different breed, and they are, and their service set is different.
Yeah.
but that's got to be morphing more and more into traditional full service agency. And I don't know that traditional PR is really still a thing as much anymore.
I would tend to agree. Yeah. And I know with the clients you work with, I'm sure. Yeah, I would, the way that's kind of morphing. And I think, PR for many of them, a lot weren't ahead of the game with social, but so many were, as they should have been. And you see how they evolved quicker than a lot of the other ones did. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's communication. So yeah, it's whatever tool you're utilizing.
Right.
So you're responsible for inbound sales to RSW as far as getting new agencies on board.
Correct.
And are you also responsible for getting them the meetings, or is that a whole different team?
No, different. So when I started, our folks are new business directors. The first 2.5 years, I was a new business director. Without getting too deep into it, each one of our new business directors has 4 clients in total.
Okay.
They cannot conflict with each other in any way. So
Right.
yeah, I was there. I was that salesperson, that SDR, getting the meetings for each of my 4 clients. And, I loved it because it was different, obviously, because I'm going after different verticals with each one. It's never boring, and it gets pretty busy, and we're white labeled. So you are wearing like 4 different hats as well. So you're reaching out on the agency server in their name. But yeah, after that, about 2.5 years is when our president, Mark Snyder, brought me over to help him. As a small business owner himself, he can only do so much, right? So he needed someone who can help me sell and bring agencies on board. And since then, that's evolved to where I do a good chunk of our marketing as well, because I love that piece of it. I'm lucky that I get to do both.
Yeah.
Sales and the marketing side for us. But yeah, what I'm doing every day for the last decade is reaching out to agency owners and principals.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, so in your funnel or in your life cycle of sale, at what point are agency owners saying, you know what, I need to take this hat off and bring in somebody like Lee. I can't do this anymore. Or is it more of, you're doing okay, but you could be doing a heck of a lot better. Let us show you the way. Or what's that tipping point for an agency owner?
I love that question, actually, because there's no straightforward answer. One of the big ones is they try to hire internally. I'm being very self-serving here, but it's just true.
Yeah.
We do agency reports about 3 to 4 a year. And sometimes marketers are included in that. But the point is, for the last several years, 18 months is the average tenure of a new business director at an agency.
Yeah.
That's frustrating for agency owners. And quite frankly, sometimes it wasn't a good hire. Other times, maybe that agency wasn't prepped to help that individual. And I know I realize that you're nodding your head like that.
Been there.
Yeah, right. And it's, or that, they're good and I'm bouncing. I mean, thank you, love y'all, but there's a better opportunity here. And that's just the way it goes. But it's, I always tell agencies when they're talking to me about RSW, thankfully we're far enough along that if we're not the right fit, they shouldn't come on board. I wouldn't want them to. But one of those things is I'm like, look, if you find that person, never let them go. They're out there, and you see a lot of agencies, and I have good relationships with several of them. I know they're probably not ever going to come on board with us. That's okay, but they're an amazing sounding board. That's probably it, or they try to do it themselves. And it's not that it can't work, because it totally can, but usually it's a principal or it's the owner. And it's so hard to do. It's possible, but you got to be Superwoman or Superman to get all that done. So,
yeah. There's a lot of hats being worn, and a lot of agency owners are, when they're on that path of what's more efficient for my company, and if I take myself out of the day-to-day, that's typically one of the last things they'll take themselves out of, because in most cases the agency's revenue is built on their relationships and the back of their work. And so even if they can stop doing the day-to-day branding or tactical design work or strategy work or whatever, they're not doing account management. Maybe they're, and this is rare, but maybe they're not even doing their billing anymore. They've outsourced that to a CFO or a bookkeeper or somebody in-house doing it. This is one of those things where they're just holding on so tight to it. That's one of those evolutions of either you bring somebody in or outsource it. Now, do you work in conjunction? Like, if I'm the owner, can I keep doing biz dev and you tag team it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to be upfront when agencies come on board, just to make sure that we don't want to step on toes. Because in that situation you mentioned, a lot of times the owner may have been making headway, and I've got some that I need to hold on to here, but I need to help maybe here and in that scenario. And some have new business directors there, but because that can be such a challenging job by yourself, if that person is responsible for top of the funnel all the way to pitching RFP proposal. And then on top of that, where our list coming from? Where's our content coming from? Some of those that are on an island by themselves, I don't know how they do that either. And they're out there too, but man, it's very hard, as I'm preaching to the choir again when I say that.
Yeah. And so I don't want you to open up the secret sauce of, secret jar of sauce that you guys have there, but what are some of the things that you're seeing agencies needing to do to stand out, AOR work, things like that, and really make the growth that they are looking for?
There's no secret sauce we can't share in the sense of it's proprietary or something. I mean, we share with agencies all the time. We make a lot of content because, again, we know they're not all going to come on board. But eventually, I mean, I have agencies who I've talked to for 7 and 8 years. I just brought a client on, it's been 8 years. Absolutely, timing's got to be right, and so where we find success, it's two things. And it's agencies can do this themselves. Granted, they've got to have, some of the things are going to be tough because we do have our tech stack and a lot of tools that if you added all that up would be tough for a smaller mid-sized firm to do. But setting that aside for a second, just the process itself, two things that can be corralled by an agency today that we see working. And the first one, what we want to do is reach out with intent, with purpose, with value, and ultimately expertise is the best way to put it, right? Because I know you get the same emails I do every day that every agency principal does. That is, and I'm not knocking anyone specifically, any company, but it is straight up garbage and it is so generic and the homework has not been done that I just don't get it. I mean, some of it's automated and what have you, right? But you're reaching out to me. We're a biz dev firm. And what you're asking me means you don't know what we do. That's not like that's a new thing, but it's gotten so much worse. The LinkedIn cold selling has gotten worse. I've mentioned that in some videos that we've done, but I think ultimately it's not rocket science in the sense of always thinking about your messaging and your positioning and how are you helping clients? What is, and I know this is what you help clients with too, showing them. And I was just talking to a firm today, actually a production company that is more horizontally positioned. That kind of makes sense, right? Because they're doing a lot of this video across multiple, categories and verticals, and it was a little bit kind of stuck, like not lost, that's too strong a term. But I said, you've got the expertise and you've got to focus. You don't even realize it. And so just on the sales call, was kind of walking in through like, here's how we might attack this, for lack of a better word, and like bring you to market, whether we work together or not. You've got this, like the sauce here. And so I think that's the first piece. But then it's with every touch, we've got to make sure that they see that we're not wasting your time. You're not a name on a list, but you only have 10 seconds to do it. And I know agencies, some of them are generalists. They're proud of it. I don't want to be a pharma agency or CPG agency. Right?
They fight the niche very hard.
Yeah. And you don't have to do that because, again, most of these don't realize that even now they're still specializing. Maybe it's geographically, but whatever it is, agencies don't have to be like, no, I'm a generalist. And that's what got us through COVID. So don't tell me I have to now focus. And you don't have to focus on one vertical. You don't. And so the other piece of it, though, and what I would definitely throw out to folks right now, kind of what's old school is new again. It's cyclical, like a lot of the agency world. So what's working for us is social where it makes sense. We want to have some kind of permission and not do the cold LinkedIn selling. But I'll tell you what's really been helpful, where we're getting meetings a lot is through old school phone calling and through physical mail. It still works, uncluttered space, and it's only one tool in the toolbox. But for us, it's putting all those things in concert with each other and then alternating touches. So we're never sending 5 emails in a row to somebody in a week or 5 calls. It's alternating so that you're building awareness, but you're doing it the right way because you don't know where a prospect lives, because they could be more receptive to a phone call, and an email might still work. But when they get something like a really simple, straightforward collateral piece in the mail, which is old school, but especially now that we've gotten to where folks are coming back in the office, or they're certainly getting their mail, we get responses like, wow, this is, I haven't gotten anything like this in forever. Talk to me about this, So it's just another way to make what could be a cold call warmer. So those are the two things I'd throw out to agencies today.
Interesting.
Think about
now in the case of direct mail or something that's kind of visually representing the agency that you guys are now a bolted on part of, they're designing it, you're coming to them with the idea and you're saying, hey, let's do a direct mail piece and it should be this size, go ahead, design it.
Yeah, we only outsource one thing. So we have a great designer here in Cincinnati, here in town, that if we have, and we do have clients that they don't have those resources, that's not the type of agency they are.
Right.
Then it's not a profit center. They work directly. His name's Steve, and they work with him, and so we can do it that way. But most of them have, a lot of our agencies are creative and or have that capacity, or partners. So yeah, what we don't do is play creative director, but we do know what works. So we're there to guide, but ultimately, especially like copy wise, we want to make sure, because a lot of times with those pieces, you don't want to, just like with an email, right? You don't want to see a copy, because the process you're like, I'm not reading this, So you gotta be careful, but no, mostly they're designing it typically.
Yeah. And you guys are doing kind of the upfront coaching with them to say, here's some things you guys should do to get positioned and ready to take these meetings, talk about your agency. And then are you also setting them up with systems, CRM, et cetera, along the way, or is that all on your side?
That's all on our side. The first part, absolutely. I mean, it's critical that we have about a month of ramp up where we're going through and making sure that the positioning is on point. We are building the list for our clients. That's part of the program, making sure that all those deliverables have been approved, so that out of the gate, once we start prospecting. And so, ultimately, yes, the coaching and counseling, if it's needed up front, is all there, and that positioning is all there. The CRM, we need to do that on our ends because we've got to be able to, to track everything that we do. And some clients have some of these CRMs. Most of them love them all. And then talking about just agencies generally, the story that you always get is, we have a CRM and we don't really do a lot with it.
Or we have a spreadsheet. We also don't do anything with that. So
I mean, in the spreadsheet, we do these reports. We talk about tools as one of the questions typically. And whenever we ask about CRM, because we always want to see if there's something maybe that more agencies are using. But Excel is either 2 or 3 in every one we've done over the last decade.
I believe it.
Like, it's not a CRM, but hey, it's better than nothing. But you're going to have to eventually move away from that because it'll drive you insane.
I've seen systems of note cards. These are our prospects. They're on a note card, and I've got a 4-colored pen, and each color means something different. And the only person that really knows what each of those 4 colors means is the CEO. Now, it wasn't me.
Oh my God, that's
drive
awesome.
was an uphill battle.
And what happens if the orange pen disappears? It's all we got to stop.
That's it. Yeah, no more orange. So agencies are definitely notorious for either not having systems or having really bad systems. I mean, listen, I used a giant whiteboard for years. That was our project management tool. So getting that off the wall and into a screen that everybody could collab in.
Sure.
Same thing with the CRM. People need visibility. So I know when COVID first kicked in, it was like, all right, lists are dead because nobody's in the office anymore. And unless you've got mobile numbers, you really can't reach people. I mean, people are either not going back to offices, or there's some kind of a hybrid. Is, Zoom info and all these, list sources, are they up to date? Are they better? Or should agencies still stay away from them?
Yeah, I don't think you can afford to stay away. I mean, it's interesting. I'll tell you that we got, as COVID was going big time, and even as it started to change and whatever we were all calling it, the phone actually stayed pretty strong because all those phones were being forwarded for the most part.
Yeah.
And people were more willing to talk. Well, I'm not kidding, but it's a little, I think it's because honestly, a lot of them, like we all were, cooped up. Like, I haven't seen other people, maybe except my family, right? And I'll take this call just to see.
I'll talk to anybody.
I mean, there maybe was a little bit of that. Now, we had to then make sure that they saw the value. But it was interesting. I mean, phone really didn't go away, and it was interesting when you said it. I heard that so often. Well, the phone, they can't do the phone anymore because of COVID. I'm like, no, you can. You got to keep going. Now, those tools. And you bring up a great point, because, and I will say it's the one thing, I'll be self-serving again, but that is really tough for agencies to do. Now, you can get into a tool like a Zoom Info, which is a great tool. And I wish I was getting money from them, but I'm not. But that is one of the tools we use. So we have to have a tech stack that we're always looking to update to make our processes more efficient. But we would never just pull a list from there or any platform, because we have a 10-person team. You got to have folks that have experience and that work with your clients ongoing, get to know what those right titles are, what the right revenue is. And that's a manual process in some ways. I mean, thankfully not too much so, or we get this done. But I think agencies can still trust those tools to a great extent. It's just, if you don't have a team like ours, someone internally is going to have to do some of that vetting and or cleaning. And I always tell agencies, look, you can get it done, but you just have to take baby steps. That's kind of my mantra is I know it doesn't seem some of these numbers that you might start out with, 40 companies that are like, these are the go-tos. Focus on them for a month or two. And that is not a big number, but you got to start somewhere, and then you can slowly, because there's going to be those days when you never get to it. I think, and those kind of tools will help. And we use things like, the free ones too, Google and LinkedIn. Google's your friend, use it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Are your sales teams Sandler trained or any,
They're not, well, that's not necessarily true. Actually, some have. And what we typically are looking at is, and this is really important too, each of our new business directors on average have 15 to 20 years of sales and marketing experience. They've either worked in an agency, like in their past life, if you will, or they've worked on the client side in some capacity. So that level of experience is what's key. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be like Sandler trained. Some have been, or in some other capacity of training, but it's that experience that is huge. And, when we first started the business, when Mark first started the business, it was interesting because we're like, okay, we're a sales organization, but they've got to know the agency world or else we can't hire them. And we realized, well, that's not true. It's got to be the opposite, because the best of both worlds is that they have some agency experience if possible, or like myself, had worked alongside an agency, but sales has to come first because that's everything. Because we don't, when we come in, and I'll get asked sometimes in sales calls, well, hey, so if we work with you, are you going to have the retail experience that we need? Because that's our vertical. That's what we go after. And I'll tell them, not necessarily. If we can match up, absolutely. But we are never professed to be experts in any given vertical, but we are experts in new business. We'll do the homework, and that's why we have experienced people. But 17 years in almost, there's not a lot of verticals we haven't worked on. And that's not bragging or saying we're amazing. That's just kind of the truth. There are only so many. There's a lot out there. But
no, but that gives you that thoroughbred to say, hey, we've been through every industry, probably we've sold into every vertical. And so we can do it for you also. And whatever micro vertical you're in isn't that unique that we haven't been there and we don't have the experience. So, and it's not, again, to your point, it's not to sound cocky or like we've done everything, but 17 years is a lot of experience. And with, what'd you say, 18, 15 SDRs, that's a good solid team of people that are selling into different verticals. So, awesome.
Yeah. And you have to do the homework. That's the key. Because when I started, my second client, and there were only 8 of us when I started, was a pharma agency. I knew what pharma was. I generally knew the industry, but I'm like, I didn't know about disease states. I didn't know about different, trials and things like that. So, but I had to learn. And the key there is we're at that top of the funnel. Our goal is not to have hour-long conversations with prospects. It's for our client to. But now we still have to break through effectively. And if we're not intelligently speaking their language, well, we're never going to break through. But the goal is for them to be having these meetings, right? So
yeah, I love it. Listen, we could talk about this all day. I need to stick to my commitment of 25 minutes, but I want to hit you with a couple of rapid fires. So coming out of COVID, either the craziest thing you and your family did or the biggest lesson you took out of the pandemic?
I think coming out of it was more just like, you still have to find a way to be social for me. And it was the opposite for a lot of people, right? Like I was pretty happy to be shut down. I'm kind of a social person, but I think for me, it was just making sure that, especially with our team, and not to make it about business because it wasn't all about that, but I think it was just, for me, being sealed away was not a good thing.
Yeah. Cool. A podcast, book, show, something that you're binging and super into right now.
I'm a big omnibus. It's Ken Jennings, who hosts Jeopardy. And John Roderick is a musician, and it's amazing. It's like esoteric knowledge. My wife and I just started watching the 3rd season of Peaky Blinders, so that's what we're doing.
I love it. And then finally, a super invaluable piece of business advice that you can give for agency owners that you can't live without.
Don't talk at them, talk to them. Your messaging, whether it's email or not, can go such a long way because there's so much just junk and kind of fakery, and a lot of it is automatic, that when someone sees something that comes through, it's like, it sounds like they actually maybe could help me. It is kind of an art, but man, it takes you a long way rather than.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Grateful for you joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks.
Thanks again for tuning in to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. As always, if you found value in this episode, chances are someone else will too, so please share it with your network. Also, if you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love, drop me a note. Let's get them on. Finally, find someone to hug today.